Hello, my friends. This is Lindy. Welcome to Magpie Reads. It is a special day today. It is September 30th, and in Canada, it is National Truth and Reconciliation Day today. This is a day of mourning intended to honor children who were stolen from their families and forced to attend prisons that they called residential schools. And it's also a time to think about their families and their communities. Some people survived these schools, many did not. And the residential schools are a trauma that continues to affect Indigenous people all across Canada. The last school of that type closed in 1996. I am wearing an orange shirt and a bolo tie in honor of this day. Orange Shirt Day was started a number of years ago. There'll be some links down below for more information. But the orange shirt does symbolize that every child matters. And the bolo tie was given to my father by the chief of the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, Morley. When I was a child, I spent a total of about 9 or 10 months off and on living in Morley on the Nakota Nation because my father was working there, and I attended school the first half of grade 6 when I was living there. Two of the books that I will be talking about today are by First Nations authors. The other thing I'm going to mention, since it's the last day of September, is Shorty September. I even printed off the Shorty September creation with the 12 prompts that Heather and her daughter created. Heather, a soggy expat, and the Shorty September prompts, I think, were from Sean and Bert from Past Story Time. Links below. I've only got 6 out of the 12 done, and I am continuing. I love this idea, and I know which books I want to read for the remaining prompts. So my Shorty September is going into October, and who knows, maybe even November. I don't know. This week I have been continuing my buddy read with Marilyn Maya Mendoza. We are reading Cora Sandel's Alberta and Freedom together. I'm loving it. And I started a buddy read this week with Gemma of Gemma Books. We are reading Our Wives Under the Sea, and I will be talking about that on my next Friday reads because we'll be done by then. What else? I had 2 book clubs this week. I will talk more about those when I get to the related books later on in this video. And I had a gift package that arrived all the way from New Zealand from my friend Claire, who's a book editor there in Auckland. And I am so happy with these books. Oh, and look at this gorgeous card. She had no idea that I was going to be reading Our Wives Under the Sea, and there's some relation there, but this art is by Helen Ahpornsiri. I've previously taken out a book, all of her art. Maybe I'll put that in the link down below as well. So in this package of books, there's New Zealand poems and a Maori woman's novel, Kurangatuku, and it is by Puiti Huriaka. And it is about, or a retelling of a traditional Maori tale from the viewpoint of a bird woman. Here's the other illustration. I'm so looking forward to reading this. It was a finalist for the Auckland New Zealand Fiction Awards. And a new one by Kate DeGoldie, Eddie. I have previously read her the 10 p.m. question, which I highly recommend, and the Barney Kettle one from the cutting room of Barney Kettle. That one was set in Christchurch, and this one too, so after the earthquakes, the big earthquakes in Christchurch. And it's sort of a retelling of Dickens' A Christmas Carol too, so this might be a good December read. We shall see. When Claire even had some gannet wrapping paper, oh, every little detail. There's a gannet colony at Muriwai that I love going to visit when I'm in Auckland. Another thing that happened this week is I got this in the mail, a certificate for my Front Yards in Bloom third place prize, and it says on it, as an excellent example of natural beauty, this yard was selected as the 2022 Natural Front Yards in Bloom third place winner for its contribution to community livability and spirit in Edmonton. And I am extremely grateful. I have battled the city in the past about my very foresty front yard, so this kind of recognition feels really good. I did have some footage of my front yard in an earlier video, and that will be mentioned and linked down below if you're interested and you haven't seen it yet. Right now I'm in the backyard where I usually film, and there are two dogs out here. They're both kind of curled up next to me, but I don't know how long that will stay, so we shall see. And I'm really hoping that we're going to hear some sandhill cranes going overhead, because all week I've been hearing them. They have such a unique sound, but they're so high up, or they have been so far, that I haven't, my phone doesn't make a good video of them, but maybe we can hear them. We'll see. And the other exciting news this week was the announcement of the Giller shortlist. I didn't get around to doing a reaction video, but my shadow juror colleague, Jolene of Bookworm Adventure Girl, did do a reaction video. I will link that down below. Jolene and the other shadow juror, Penny, and I will be reading the entire shortlist and coming up with the book that we think should win before the official announcement will be made of the Giller Prize winner on November the 7th. Now, I'm way ahead of Jolene and Penny because I've actually read all of the shortlist, and I will be talking about some of those books in this video, so hang on. I am also going to be seeing a couple of long-listed, well, one long-listed and one short-listed author at the Vancouver Writers Fest, which is coming up soon. It's like 3 weeks away, so that's coming as well. So I have finished 7 books this week. 4 of them are queer. 2 of them are middle grade novels. 2 of them I listened to in audio. 2 are by Indigenous authors. And 5 out of the 7 are 5-star reads. So normally I save the best book for last, on my videos, but these ones are just all fantastic. So it has been a really great reading week. First off, I'm going to tell you about The Stone Child. This is book 3 in the Misewa Saga by David Alexander Robinson, who is a Cree author and educator from Manitoba. And I talked about the second book in this trilogy. It was in a all Indigenous Friday read, so I am going to link that down below, especially because today is National Truth and Reconciliation Day. These books, you really need to read them in order. Start with the first one. Basically, they are a Narnia type series where children go through a portal into another world that is kind of based on Cree mythology. There's lots of Cree words, and in The Stone Child there is a Bigfoot, Sasquatch type monster. The audiobook is read by Brefny Caribou, and it would make a good family listening road trip audiobook, I think. Next up is one from the long list of the Giller Prize, Billy Ray Belcourt's A Minor Chorus. Billy Ray Belcourt is a Cree man from northern Alberta and has previously won the Griffin Award, which is Canada's most prestigious poetry award, for his book A Wound is a World. This is his first novel, and it's kind of like genre defying because it is about a man from the Driftpal Nation, which is where Belcourt is from, who is taking a break from his academic work on his PhD and decides to write a novel about the people from the community where he grew up. So we follow him as he's interviewing people and thinking about everyday lives of ordinary people. See all of these passages I've marked because his writing is fantastic, and it's a very moving story that covers the Canadian history of colonialism and residential schools and what it's done to people. Now this cover, so the Canadian cover, is artwork done by Michelle Sound, and it's got moose hair tufting. It's a photograph of Canuso, which is near the community where he grew up, and there's rips in the photograph that are stitched together. There's beadwork, and I found out that Michelle Sound has got an art exhibit up right now in Vancouver. It will be there when I'm visiting Vancouver next month, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it at the Burrard Art Institute. The American cover looks quite different. It is a motel room, I think, a bed, a flowered bedspread, also applicable to the story. Okay, so these next two are both on the short list for the Giller Prize. If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor Naga. Another genre-defying book. It's divided into 3 parts, and in the first part it alternates between 2 voices. There's a young man from a village in Egypt, his voice, he's not named, and the other voice is a young woman who's of Egyptian heritage, who travels to Cairo and is kind of reclaiming her Egyptian heritage. But each of those chapters starts with a sort of question or koan, I guess. This is the first page. Question: if you don't have anything nice to say, should your mother be punished? So again, this is the viewpoint of the young man from a village in Egypt. That's about 140 kilometers from Cairo. And he leaves, and it's in Cairo that he meets this woman who also is not named. Her section starts with this question: is it arrogant to return to a place you've never been? And it goes on. If I was a white girl with a shaved head, they probably wouldn't have cared. But because I was an Egyptian girl with a shaved head, they wouldn't let me forget it. So the two meet and life ensues. Very intriguing. So the official jurors, they said, this is the official jurors from the Giller Prize, they said it has startling emotional depth and intellectual vigor, and that it's slim and infinitely capacious, which I thought was pretty apt. So the other shortlisted book that I read this week is The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayr. Oh, I adore Suzette Mayr. My favorite books of hers that I've previously read are Venus Hum, Monoceros, and Dr. Edith Vane and the Hares of Crawley Hall. So, The Sleeping Car Porter is based on historical fact in Canada that black train porters did the service work on trains. And so this one is about Baxter. It's set in about the 1920s, and he is on a 4-day train journey from Montreal headed to Vancouver. And people make many demands on him. The racism is highly apparent. Baxter has a dream to become a dentist. He's been saving up money, all of his tips and every amount of money he can possibly save. But he is severely sleep deprived because while people are sleeping, he's still working. He's polishing shoes. He is answering the bell. People need the ladder put there so they can go down to use the toilet. People can't sleep and they want a cup of tea and all of this. The porter is serving them constantly. I'll read you a little passage here about Baxter. He sways, deranged with lack of sleep, fire licking at the edges of his brain. Dr. Hubble, professor of medicine, salutes Baxter as he strides down the passageway to the diner, does a pirouette just before he rounds the corner, and collides with the wattly man who drops his biography of Napoleon, the pages fluttering, the dust jacket flipping off. Baxter dives for the book. The exposed cloth cover is not the title of a biography of the Emperor Napoleon. It's Lady Audley's Secret. Baxter hands the book back to the man who growls the way back in the direction from which he came. Oh, and by the way, Baxter is a gay man in 1929. And I like that passage because I know there are some people on BookTube who are doing a group read of Lady Audley's Secret. So, hello Maya and the rest of you. Now what the judges said about this one was that it is stylish and triumphant. So the other three I have talked about in previous videos, and I will link them down below. I will just give you a few words from the judges about each. Kim Fu's lesser known monsters of the 21st century. They said it dazzles. I agree. And Rawi Haj's Stray Dogs. They called it understated and confident. I agree. And Tsering Yangsom Lama's We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies, the judges said was a stirring family saga about Tibetan diaspora. I think it's the same video where I talk about We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies that has the walk through my front garden. So look down below if you want more. So that is the second queer book that I've read this week. The third one actually was an audiobook, Rainbow Rainbow by Lydia Conklin, and it was read by Julia Weldon, consummate audiobook performer. And the stories in that one are all queer or lesbian, trans, and an unusual perspective with every one of them. Most of them were set in the US, and I think a couple of them are set in Poland, which is a bit different too. A second middle grade novel that I read this week is Starfish by Lisa Fipps, and this was for my YA book club. I think I like this the best of everybody in my group. I gave it 5 stars, and on Goodreads it has an overall rating of I think 4.51 out of something like 15,000 people who rated it. So that's a pretty solid pick, I think. And it's written in verse. It's a debut novel, and it is about a middle school girl who is fat. And she not only has trouble at school, but with her mother and her siblings as well. I'm going to read you a passage from a poem called Pulling Sneakies. Everyone in my family plays the piano except me. Years ago, I asked Mum for lessons as a Christmas gift. I remember joining her on the piano bench, sliding my fingers over the slick, shiny keys. You really want to learn? Mum asked. More than anything, I told her. Fine, she told me, and stood up and shut the lid. When you lose weight. So now I never let Mum know what I want because she'll keep it from me as punishment for being fat, disguised as motivation to lose weight. There's a lot of heartbreak in here, but Ellie is just such a fantastic character, and figures out, with the help of some adults and a friend her age, how to stand up for herself and deal with the bullying. So I loved it. And the last book I have to tell you about is America is Not the Heart by Elaine Castillo. Now, this was our Lesbian Plus book club pick, but our meeting was actually canceled, postponed. I'm not sure when we're going to be discussing it. I'm really looking forward to that discussion because this book is excellent. It is about 3 generations from a Filipina extended family. So set partly in the Philippines, partly in California. There's Paz, who grew up poor, married a doctor from a rich family, and they emigrate to California. Paz is working 2 jobs, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week as a nurse. And Paul his credentials aren't valid, so he's doing other kinds of work when he's in the US. They have a daughter, Ronnie, who's about 6 or 7 years old, and she has severe eczema. Her little body is just scarred with it, and she's always scrapping at school. She gets into these fights. So Ronnie, her full name is Hieronyma, named for an ancestor. And the other main character in this novel is Paul's niece, so his brother's daughter, and her name is also Hieronyma. She's in her 30s, though. She has spent 10 years in the New People's Army, so the communist rebels. This novel, by the way, is set in the late 80s, early 90s. And so Hieronyma actually goes by Hero. And she is a hero. She had been training to be a doctor when she was recruited into this New People's Army. And so she works as a doctor for the rebels. But then she was captured and tortured, and after 2 years in prison was released in very bad shape. So she is recuperating in California with Paz and Paul, and Ronnie kind of becomes her responsibility because her parents are always working. Hero is bisexual, and there's lots of sexy stuff that goes on between her and some other characters in this book. What struck me the most about this book are how real these characters are, while at the same time giving me a feel for the political situation in the Philippines and the reality for the immigrants and with their lives in the US, which in some ways are better, in some ways worse than if they would have stayed in the Philippines. I heard Elaine Castillo talk about this book at the Vancouver Writers Fest when it first came out, and I've been wanting to get to it ever since, so I'm so glad that I finally read it. And she has a collection of essays coming out, which I am looking forward to also. That's it for this week's Friday Reads. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Be well. Bye.